Hey there, viewer. I'm so excited you're here with me today. Before we jump into this super cool story, I've got a fun question for you. Have you ever had a nosy neighbor? You know, someone who's always peeking over the fence or complaining about every little thing you do. Maybe they don't like your dog barking or your music playing. Drop a quick comment below and tell me if you've ever met someone like that. And while you're at it, let me know where you're watching from today. Like, are you at home, at school, or maybe somewhere super cool? I'd love to hear. And if you like wild stories like the one I'm about to tell, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on more fun adventures with me. Okay, are you ready? Let's get started with this awesome tale. Picture a little neighborhood. It's super quiet, the kind of place where you can hear birds chirping and kids laughing. The lawns are green and perfect, like someone trimmed them with scissors. The mailboxes are shiny and every house looks neat and tidy. This is where our story happens, and it's where a guy named Jake Parker lived. Jake was a pretty cool dude. He was only 25 years old, not super old, but not a kid either. He had short brown hair, a big smile, and a leather jacket that made him look like he belonged in a movie. But the coolest thing about Jake, he had a motorcycle. Oh man, it was awesome. It was black and shiny with a big engine that growled when he turned it on. Jake loved that bike more than anything. Every day after work, he'd hop on it and ride around, feeling the wind in his face. To him, it was the best feeling in the world, like flying without wings. Jake lived in a small house at the end of the street. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. He liked keeping things simple. He'd park his motorcycle in the driveway, kick off his boots, and relax with a soda on his porch. Most of the neighbors liked Jake. He'd wave hello, help carry groceries if someone needed it, and never caused trouble. To them, he was just a nice guy who loved his bike. But not everyone thought Jake was so great. Nope, there was one person in this perfect little neighborhood who couldn't stand him, and that person was Mrs. Karen Thompson. Oh boy, Karen was something else. She wasn't just any neighbor, she was the president of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like no loud music or keep your grass short. Karen took her job way too seriously. She acted like she was the queen of the whole street, and she had an eagle eye for anything she didn't like. Karen was older, maybe 50 or so, with short blonde hair that she kept perfect with tons of hairspray. She always wore bright sweaters and carried a little notepad to write down things she wanted to complain about. Her house was right across the street from Jake, and she'd sit on her porch with a cup of tea, watching everyone like a hawk. If someone's trash can was out too long, she'd march over and tell them to fix it. If a kid left a toy in the yard, she'd leave a note. Karen loved rules, and she loved making sure everyone followed them. Now let's talk about why Karen didn't like Jake. It all started with that motorcycle. See, Jake's bike wasn't super loud, but it did make a little noise when he started it up. And the lights on it, they were bright, really bright. Jake thought they looked cool, like something from a superhero movie. But Karen, oh no, she hated those lights. Every time Jake rode home at night, the headlights would flash across her windows, and she'd jump up like someone had thrown a rock at her house. Too bright. She'd mutter to herself, too noisy, that boy is nothing but trouble. The first time Karen met Jake, she made it clear she didn't like him. It was a sunny Saturday and Jake was washing his motorcycle in the driveway. He had the hose out, spraying water everywhere, and he was whistling a happy tune. Karen marched over, her arms crossed tight. "Young man," she said, her voice sharp like a teacher scolding a kid, "what do you think you're doing with that thing?" And Jake looked up, wiping water off his hands. "Oh, hi, I'm just washing my bike. Pretty cool, right?" He smiled, trying to be friendly. Karen didn't smile back. "Cool? No, it's not cool. It's loud, it's dangerous, and those lights are blinding me every night. You need to get rid of it." Jake scratched his head. I don't think it's that loud, and the lights are legal, I checked." But Karen wasn't having it. "Legal or not, I don't like it. This is a nice neighborhood and we don't need troublemakers like you." Then she turned around and stomped back to her house, leaving Jake standing there confused. He didn't get why she was so mad. It was just a bike. But to Karen, Jake and his motorcycle were like a big, annoying fly buzzing around her perfect little world. From that day on, Karen made it her mission to watch Jake. Every time he rode his bike, she'd glare at him from her porch. If he left it parked in the driveway, she'd scribble something in her notepad. She even started telling the other neighbors that Jake was a bad influence. "He's going to ruin this street," she'd say, shaking her head. Most people just rolled their eyes and ignored her, but Karen didn't care. She was sure Jake was up to no good. Here's the thing though, Jake wasn't bothered by Karen, not really. He'd see her starring and just wave like it was no big deal. "Hey, Mrs. Thompson," he'd call out, grinning. That only made her madder. She'd huff and puff and go inside, slamming her door. Jake thought it was kind of funny. He didn't know why she hated him so much, but he figured she'd get over it eventually. After all, he wasn't hurting anyone. But what Jake didn't tell anyone, what nobody in the neighborhood knew, was that he wasn't just some guy with a motorcycle. Oh no, Jake had a secret, a big one. He wasn't just riding around for fun or washing his bike to pass the time. There was something else going on with him, something he kept hidden from everyone, even Karen. And that secret, it was about to make this story a whole lot crazier. See, while Karen was busy complaining about Jake's bike, she didn't realize she was the one who should have been worried. Jake wasn't the troublemaker she thought he was. In fact, he was the opposite. But nobody knew that yet, not the neighbors, not Karen, not even you, the viewer. All they saw was a guy with a cool bike and a nosy neighbor who wouldn't leave him alone. But trust me, things were about to get wild. Imagine this, every time Karen yelled at Jake, she was stepping closer to a big surprise. Every time she shook her finger or wrote a note, she was digging herself into a hole she didn't even see. Jake's secret was like a ticking clock, counting down to the moment everything would flip upside down. And when that moment came, oh boy, Karen was going to wish she'd never messed with him. So what was Jake hiding? Why wasn't he just a regular guy? And how was this all going to turn Karen's perfect little world into a big mess? You'll have to stick around to find out, because this story is just getting started. I've got so much more to tell you, twists, turns, and a big reveal that'll make your jaw drop. But for now, let's leave it here, with Jake washing his bike and Karen glaring from across the street, totally clueless about what's coming her way. What do you think so far? Are you Team Jake or Team Karen? Drop a comment and let me know, and don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you want to see how this all ends. Trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Karen Thompson was not your average neighbor. Oh no, she was the kind of person who'd grab a ruler and measure your grass just to make sure it wasn't one tiny bit too long. If your mailbox was a little crooked, she'd notice. If your dog barked once, she'd write it down in her little notepad. Karen loved rules more than anything, and she made sure everyone in the neighborhood knew it. She lived in a perfect house with perfect flowers and a perfect porch, and she wanted the whole street to be just as perfect as she was. But then there was Jake Parker. Jake was the total opposite of perfect, at least in Karen's eyes. He was young, only 25, and he had that shiny black motorcycle with bright lights that drove her crazy. Every single evening, when Jake rode home from work, Karen would be sitting on her porch. She'd have her arms crossed tight, her lips squeezed into a thin line, and her eyes would follow him like a cat watching a mouse. She didn't say anything at first, but you could tell she hated that bike. To her, it was loud, it was messy, and it didn't belong in her nice, quiet neighborhood. One day, Karen couldn't take it anymore. Jake had just pulled into his driveway, the engine of his motorcycle rumbling softly as he turned it off. He hopped off, took off his helmet, and shook out his messy brown hair. That's when Karen decided it was time to make her move. She stood up from her porch chair, her bright pink sweater glowing in the sunlight, and marched across the street like she was on a mission. Her shoes clicked on the pavement, and her face was already turning pink from being so mad. Now Jake looked up just as she got close. "Hey, Mrs. Thompson," he said with a little wave, trying to be nice. But Karen wasn't in a nice mood. She stopped right in front of him, pointed a finger at his bike, and snapped, "Those lights on your bike are too bright. They shine right into my windows every night, and it's a danger to the whole neighborhood." Jake blinked, surprised. He tilted his head and looked at his motorcycle. The lights were off now, but he knew what she meant. They were pretty bright when he rode at night, like little stars on the front of his bike. He liked them that way because they made him feel safe on the road. They're just normal lights, Mrs. Thompson," he said, raising an eyebrow. "I even checked the rules. They're okay." Karen's face turned bright red, like a tomato about to pop. She didn't like being told she was wrong, not one bit. "Don't you talk back to me, young man," she shouted, her voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I make the rules around here. I'm the HOA president, and I say those lights are a problem." She shook her finger at him, then spun around and stomped back to her house, her shoes clicking even louder. As she walked, she muttered under her breath about troublemakers and disrespectful kids. Jake just stood there watching her go. He scratched the back of his head and shrugged. "Okay then," he said to himself with a little laugh. He wasn't mad or anything. Karen had complained before about his music once, and another time about a soda can he forgot in the yard, so this wasn't new. He figured she'd get tired of yelling at him someday and leave him alone. Besides, he wasn't doing anything wrong. His bike was fine, his lights were fine, and he wasn't hurting anybody. So why was she so upset? But here's the thing, Jake didn't just forget about it. Sure, he shrugged it off on the outside, but deep down, he started paying more attention to Karen. Something about her didn't feel right. She wasn't just a grumpy neighbor who liked rules. She was too grumpy, too bossy, and too snaky. Like, why did she care so much about his bike? Why was she always watching him? Jake didn't say it out loud, but he was starting to wonder if Karen was hiding something. Maybe she wasn't as perfect as she wanted everyone to think. See, Jake was a chill guy, but he wasn't dumb. He noticed things. Like how Karen's garage door was always closed tight, even on hot days when everyone else left theirs open. Or how she'd get these big packages delivered to her house, but she'd rush them inside before anyone could see. Most people didn't care. They thought Karen was just being her weird, picky self, but Jake, he started watching her closer than she realized. A few days after the big light fight, something else happened. Jake was riding home late, the sky all dark and starry. His headlights lit up the street as he turned into his driveway. Karen's porch light was on, and there she was again, standing there with her arms crossed. She didn't say anything this time, but her glare was so strong Jake could feel it, like lasers burning into his back. He parked, turned off the bike, and waved at her. "Good night, Mrs. Thompson," he called out, just to be polite. Karen didn't wave back. She huffed, turned around, and went inside, slamming her door so loud it echoed down the street. Jake chuckled to himself and headed into his house. But as he kicked off his boots, he thought, man, she really hates me. What's her deal? That's when he decided to keep an eye on her, not in a creepy way, just in a curious way. He didn't know why yet, but his gut told him something was up with Karen Thompson. And guess what? Jake was right to wonder. Karen thought she was the smartest person on the street, but she didn't know Jake was smarter than he looked. Every time she yelled at him or glared at his bike, she was making him more curious. She thought she had everything under control, but she was wrong. Jake wasn't just some guy with a motorcycle. He had a secret, a big one, and it was going to change everything. So the battle lines were drawn. On one side was Karen, the rule-loving, nosy neighbor who wanted Jake gone. On the other side was Jake, the cool guy with the bike who wasn't as simple as he seemed. The tension was building, like a storm getting ready to break. Karen thought she could boss Jake around, but she had no idea what she was walking into. And Jake, he was starting to figure out that Karen wasn't just annoying, she might be trouble. What was Karen hiding? Why was she so mean to Jake? And what was Jake going to do about it? Stick around, because this story is about to get even wilder. After that big fight about the motorcycle lights, things didn't calm down. Nope, they got way worse. Karen Thompson wasn't about to let Jake Parker off the hook. Over the next few weeks, she turned into a total grump. Every day, she found something new to complain about. It was like she woke up thinking, how can I make Jake's life harder today? And boy, did she try. One morning, Jake stepped outside to grab his mail, and there it was, a little piece of paper stuck to his doorstep. It was a note from Karen written in her neat, angry handwriting. "Your bike is ruining the neighborhood's image," it said. "It's loud, it's ugly, and it doesn't belong here." Jake picked up the note and read it, scratching his head. "Ruining the image," he mumbled to himself. "It's just a bike." He crumpled the paper and tossed it in the trash, shaking his head. Karen was getting on his nerves, but he still didn't want to fight back. Not yet. But Karen didn't stop with notes. Oh no, she went bigger. A few days later, Jake was inside eating a sandwich when he heard a loud noise outside. He peeked out the window and saw a big tow truck backing up to his driveway. The driver hopped out and started hooking a chain to Jake's motorcycle. Jake dropped his sandwich and ran outside, yelling, "Hey, what are you doing?" The tow truck guy looked up, surprised. I got a call to take this bike away," he said. "Some lady said it's not allowed here." Jake crossed his arms. "Some lady, let me guess, Karen Thompson." The guy nodded. "Yeah, that's her name. She said it's breaking the rules." Jake took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Look, this is my bike and it's not breaking any rules. You can't take it." The tow truck guy shrugged, unhooked the chain, and drove off. Jake watched him go, then glanced across the street. There was Karen standing on her porch, glaring at him with her arms crossed. She didn't say a word, but her face said it all. She was mad she didn't win this time. Now Jake walked back inside, shutting the door behind him. "What's her deal?" he wondered out loud. "Why does she hate my bike so much?" He sat down and finished his sandwich, but his brain wouldn't stop thinking. Karen wasn't just being picky anymore, she was trying to get rid of him, and that made Jake curious, really curious. Then one evening, something super strange happened. It was getting dark outside, and Jake was in his garage fixing a little scratch on his motorcycle. He had a wrench in his hand and a rag over his shoulder, humming a song while he worked. The garage door was open just a bit, letting in the cool night air. That's when he heard it, a voice. It was Karen, and she sounded mad, really mad. Jake stopped humming and listened. Karen was in her backyard, right across the street, talking on her phone. Her voice was loud and sharp, like she was yelling at someone. "I don't care how much it costs, just make it quick," she hissed. Jake froze. He set down his wrench and peeked out through the crack in the garage door. There she was, packing back and forth in her yard, holding her phone tight. Her face looked nervous, not just mad. She kept glancing around, like she didn't want anyone to see her. Jake stayed quiet, watching. Then he saw something weird. Karen's garage door was open a little, and inside there was a stack of packages, big ones covered with a blue tarp. They weren't normal boxes, like for clothes or books. They looked strange, like they didn't belong there. Jake squinted, trying to figure out what they were, but it was too dark to tell. Karen finished her call, shoved her phone in her pocket, and hurried inside, slamming the garage door shut. Now Jake leaned back, his heart beating a little faster. "What was that about?" he whispered to himself. He didn't say anything out loud, not to anyone. But his gut, the little voice inside him, told him something was wrong, really wrong. Karen wasn't just a mean neighbor anymore. She was acting sneaky, like she had a secret, a big one. From that night on, Jake started paying way more attention. He didn't tell the neighbors or call anyone about it, he just watched. Every time Karen left a note or glared at him, he'd smile and wave, acting like everything was fine. But inside, he was keeping track of every weird thing she did. Like how she'd get those packages delivered late at night, when most people were asleep. Or how she'd lock her doors super fast, like she was scared someone might peek inside. Now Jake didn't have proof yet, but he was starting to think Karen was up to no good. And here's the funny part, Karen thought she was winning. Every time she left a note or called someone to complain about Jake, she'd smirk like she was the boss of everything. She had no idea Jake was watching her right back. She didn't know that every mean thing she did was making him more curious, more careful. Little did she know, each complaint she made was pulling her closer to a big, big mistake. Jake kept working on his bike, riding it home every day and living his life like normal. But now he had his eyes open wide. He'd notice little things like how Karen's trash bags were always super heavy even though she lived alone, or how she'd jump if a car drove by too slow. He didn't know what it all meant yet, but he was putting the pieces together one by one. The neighborhood stayed quiet on the outside. Kids played in the yards, dogs barked, and the lawns stayed green. But between Jake and Karen, things were heating up. She kept pushing him, trying to make him mad or scared. And he kept watching, waiting, wondering what she was hiding under that tarp. It was like a game one Karen didn't even know she was playing. What was in those packages? Why was Karen so nervous? And what was Jake going to do next? This story was getting wilder every day, and the best part was still coming. Okay, get ready, because this is the part where everything changes. It was a regular night, just like any other. The sky was dark, the stars were out, and I was riding my motorcycle home. My lights were on, shining super bright, like always. I pulled into my driveway, the engine rumbling loud enough to wake up the whole street. That's when Karen came running out of her house. Oh boy, she was mad, madder than I'd ever seen her. Her face was all red and she was holding her phone up high like it was a weapon. "That's it, Jake," she yelled, her voice loud and screechy. "I've had enough of you and those stupid lights. I'm calling 911 right now. You're done." She was so angry she was shaking. I just stood there, leaning against my motorcycle with my arms crossed, cool as could be. I looked at her and said, "Okay, Karen, go ahead, make the call." My voice was calm, not loud or mean, just steady. Karen grinned, but it wasn't a nice grin. It was the kind of smile you make when you think you've won a big fight. She thought she had me trapped, like a cat catching a mouse. She started dialing the police, her fingers moving fast on the phone. "Yes, officer," she said into it, talking loud so I could hear. "There's a big problem here. This guy Jake, he's making a disturbance. His motorcycle lights are too bright and he's being reckless. Come quick." I didn't move, I didn't say anything else, I just watched her, waiting. Karen kept talking, telling the police all about how bad I was. She thought she was so smart, like she'd finally beat me. But here, where the story gets really, really good, way better than she ever expected. Before Karen could even finish her call, something amazing happened. Lights started flashing at the end of the street. Not my motorcycle lights this time, oh no. These were red and blue lights, the kind you see on police cars. Two cop cars came speeding down the road, their sirens making little whoop-whoop sounds. They were moving fast, like they were in a hurry. I could see them getting closer, and so could Karen. Her eyes got big and her mouth turned into a giant smile. She looked at me and shouted, "See, Jake, I told you, the cops are here for you, you're in big trouble now." She was so happy, she practically danced right there on her lawn. She thought the police were coming to take me away because of my bright lights. She pointed at me, laughing, sure she'd won. But then the cop cars didn't stop at my house. Nope, they kept going, rolling right past my driveway. Karen's laugh stopped quick, like someone turned it off. The cars pulled up to her house instead, parking right in her driveway. The tires squeaked as they stopped, and the red and blue lights lit up her whole front yard. Karen's face changed fast. Her big smile was gone, and now she looked confused, like she didn't know what was happening. I took a step forward, nice and slow. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled something out, something Karen had never seen before. It was a shiny badge, the kind police officers carry. I held it up so she could see it clear as day. Actually, Karen, I said, keeping my voice steady, they're not here for me, they're here for you. Her mouth fell open so wide, I bet you could have fit a whole apple in there. She stared at me, then at the badge, then back at me again. She didn't know what to say. Her phone slipped a little in her hand, but she didn't even notice. I kept talking, nice and calm. My name's Officer Jake Riley, I told her. I'm an undercover cop. That means I've been working in secret, watching everything. And guess what? I've been watching you for months. Karen's eyes got even bigger, like they might pop right out of her head. She started to shake her head like she didn't believe me, but I wasn't done. Those friends of yours who keep coming over late at night, I said, pointing at her house. They're not just friends, are they? They're part of something bad, something illegal, and we've been tracking them and you this whole time. Right then, the doors of the cop cars opened. Two big police officers stepped out, their boots hitting the ground loud and strong. They had handcuffs in their hands, shiny and ready. One of them walked toward Karen and the other stayed by the car, watching. Karen's smug little grin, the one she always wore when she yelled at me, was gone. Poof, vanished. Now she looked scared, like a kid caught stealing cookies. What? She stammered, her voice all shaky. This can't be right, Jake, you're lying, you're just a noisy kid with a dumb motorcycle. But the cops didn't listen to her. They didn't care what she said. The officer with the handcuffs got closer and said, "Ma'am, you need to come with us." His voice was deep and serious, like he meant business. Karen dropped her phone right onto the grass. It landed with a little thud, but she didn't pick it up. She just kept staring at me, then at the cops, then back at me. "No," she yelled. "This is a mistake. He's the problem, not me." She pointed at me again, but her hand was shaking so bad it looked silly. I shook my head and smiled just a little. "Who's the nuisance now, Karen?" I asked. She didn't have an answer. The cop grabbed her arm, not hard but firm, and started walking her toward the car. She kept yelling, saying stuff like, "You've got the wrong person," and "I'm innocent." But no one believed her, not the cops, not me, and not even the neighbors who were peeking out their windows by now. See, Karen thought she was the boss of everything. She thought she could boss me around, tell me what to do, and get me in trouble with my motorcycle lights. But all this time, I wasn't just some loud guy with a bike. I was a secret cop, doing my job, keeping an eye on her and her sneaky friends. And now, the truth was out, and she was the one in big, big trouble. The cop opened the car door and Karen had to get in. She didn't want to, but she didn't have a choice. Her slippers dragged on the ground as she climbed inside, still muttering and complaining. The door shut with a loud click, and that was it. The red and blue lights kept flashing, lighting up the night, but now they were taking Karen away, not me. I stood there by my motorcycle, watching it all happen. My bright lights were still on, shining across the street, but no one cared about them anymore. Karen thought she'd won when she called 911, but she didn't know the cops were already coming for her. What a twist, right? The hunter became the hunted, and I was the one who made it happen. That's the big moment, the climax of the story. Everything Karen thought she knew flipped upside down, and I got to show her who I really was. It felt good, like when you finish a hard game and win the prize. But the story, not over yet. There's more to tell about what happened next. Stick around for that. Okay, so here's what happened after that big, crazy night with Karen and the cops. You're not going to believe how it all turned out. After the police took Karen away in their car with the flashing lights, the truth started coming out, like when you open a box and find a surprise inside. Turns out, Karen wasn't just a grumpy lady who didn't like my motorcycle. Nope, she was mixed up in some really bad stuff that's not okay at all. See those people who kept coming to her house late at night? The ones I saw sneaking around when everyone else was asleep. They weren't her friends like she said. They were dealers, people who sell bad things that can hurt others. That's super serious. And that fancy car she always drove around in, the one she bragged about all the time, she didn't buy it with money from a normal job. Oh no, she used dirty money, the kind you get from doing sneaky wrong things. I couldn't believe it, and neither could the neighbors. That night, after I showed my badge and told her I was a secret cop, the whole neighborhood saw everything. People were peeking out their windows, standing on their porches, watching with big eyes. The cops held Karen's arms and walked her to their car. Her slippers made a funny scraping sound on the pavement as she dragged her feet, not wanting to go. "This is a mistake," she kept yelling, her voice loud and whiny. "You've got the wrong person. I didn't do anything." But nobody listened to her. Nobody believed her anymore. They all saw the cops, the handcuffs, and me with my badge. The truth was right there, plain as day. The police put her in the back of the car, and she was still shouting as they closed the door. "Let me out, this isn't fair," she cried, but the cops just shook their heads and drove off. The red and blue lights flashed all the way down the street until they were gone. The neighbors stayed outside for a while, talking to each other in little groups. They were whispering things like, "I can't believe it," and "Karen, really?" It was like a big shock to everyone except me, of course. I'd been watching her for months, waiting for this moment. The next day, everything felt different. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I decided to have some fun. I parked my motorcycle right in my driveway, just like always. But this time, I turned the lights on full blast, super bright, lighting up the whole yard. I stood there waiting to see what would happen. Would someone complain? Would I hear Karen's angry voice yelling at me again? Nope, not a single word. Karen wasn't there to boss me around anymore, and it felt awesome. A few neighbors walked by, and guess what? They didn't glare at me or shake their heads like they used to. Instead, some of them waved. One guy even said, "Hey Jake, nice bike." I waved back and smiled. I think they felt a little silly, you know? They listened to Karen before, agreeing with her when she said I was a troublemaker. Now they knew she was the real problem, not me. It was like they were saying sorry without saying it out loud. The HOA, the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, had a big meeting that week. Usually, Karen was the one in charge, telling everyone what to do. But not this time. They picked a new leader, a quiet lady named Mrs. Carter who didn't yell or act mean. People said she was nice and fair, and that was a big change. Nobody talked about Karen much after that. It was like she disappeared, and the neighborhood was happier without her bossing everyone around. As for me, I kept doing my job just like I always did. Being an undercover cop means I work in secret, keeping the streets safe from bad guys and bad neighbors too. I'd ride my motorcycle around, checking on things, making sure everything was okay. Every time I turned on those bright lights, I'd think about Karen and laugh a little. She hated them so much, but now they didn't bother her anymore. She was gone, and I was still here, doing what I do best. The best part, the neighborhood started feeling like a better place. People weren't so grumpy or scared to talk to each other. Kids played outside more, riding bikes and laughing. One little girl even came up to me and said, "I like your motorcycle, it's cool." I let her sit on it for a minute and she giggled the whole time. It was nice to see everyone smiling instead of frowning. Karen probably didn't like where she ended up. I heard she had to go talk to a judge, and that's never fun. When you do bad things like she did, you have to face the consequences. That's a big word, but it just means you get in trouble for what you did wrong. She thought she could trick everyone, acting all high and mighty with her fancy car and her loud voice. But in the end, she couldn't hide from the truth. The cops caught her and justice was served, like when the good guys win in a movie. I learned something from all this too. Sometimes people who act mean or bossy are hiding something. Karen didn't like me because she was afraid I'd find out her secrets. And guess what? I did. It took time, but I waited and watched, and it all worked out. Now, whenever I see someone being rude for no reason, I wonder what they're trying to keep hidden. Maybe they're not so tough after all. So that's how it ended. Karen was gone, the neighborhood was peaceful, and I kept my motorcycle lights shining bright. No more angry notes on my door, no more yelling from across the street, just quiet days and friendly waves. It felt good knowing I helped make things right. And the best part, I could be me, Officer Jake Riley, the guy with the loud bike and the big secret, without anyone trying to stop me. Justice isn't just a word, it's what happens when the truth comes out and the bad guys lose. Karen lost big time, and I got to keep doing my job, one nosy neighbor at a time. The street was safe again, and that's what mattered most. What a wild ride, huh? All right, let's wrap this up with something to think about, something that sticks with you long after the story's done. Here's the big lesson I learned from all this craziness with Karen and my motorcycle. Sometimes the person you think is just a noisy nobody, someone not important at all, turns out to be the one with all the power. It's like a card game where you hide your best cards until the very end. That's what happened here, and it's pretty cool when you think about it. Karen looked at me and saw a guy with a loud bike and bright lights. She thought that's all I was, just some kid making trouble. She judged me fast, pointing her finger and yelling, "You're a problem, Jake." She didn't even try to see who I really was, but guess what? I wasn't just a guy with a motorcycle. I was Officer Jake, a secret cop, watching her every move. She had no idea the real me was coming for her step by step until it was too late. Boom, surprise. That's what makes this story so wild. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who's hiding something right under your nose? Maybe it's the quiet kid at school who never talks much but knows everything. Or maybe it's the person next door who seems boring but has a big secret. You never really know what's going on inside someone's head or their life until the truth pops out. That's why it's smart to stay curious. Keep your eyes open, look around and ask questions, because the world is full of surprises waiting to be found. And here's another thing, don't mess with the quiet ones. People like Karen thought they could boss me around because I didn't fight back right away. I stayed calm, didn't yell, just watched and waited. But that didn't mean I was weak. Nope, it meant I was strong in a different way, sneaky and smart. The quiet ones, the ones who don't brag or show off, they might just have something up their sleeve. They could surprise you when you least expect it, just like I did to Karen. So what's the big takeaway? Be kind, be curious, and don't judge people too fast. You might think you've got someone all figured out, but you could be wrong. Karen learned that the hard way, and it didn't end well for her. Me, I got to keep riding my bike, shining my lights, and doing my job. I didn't need to shout or act big, I just needed to be me. And that was enough. Next time you see someone who seems ordinary, think twice. They might be holding all the cards, waiting for the right moment to show them. Life's like that sometimes, full of twists and turns you don't see coming. Stay open, stay brave, and don't be afraid to be the quiet one with a big surprise. You never know when you'll get your chance to shine, just like my motorcycle lights lit up the night. Keep being you, because that's the real power.